Hello. Whoa, I am hearing myself. That was weird. Okay, hello, and welcome to Fantasy Football by Committee. It is a podcast here by FlurrySports to help you win your fantasy football league this year, which we have done for people in the past, but we're putting a name to it this year. Starting next week, you'll be able to get this in audio form as an audio podcast wherever you get your podcast. For now, we're live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I almost forgot YouTube. If you're go to our YouTube, subscribe to the Flurry Sports YouTube channel, and obviously jump in the chat and ask us questions the entire time as well. But subscribe to the YouTube channel, get us above 10K, because there are promises that I have been promised by again that will be completed if we hit that milestone. So hopefully something will happen. I promise something will happen. I'll twist his arm, but the man I'm talking about is large, but a very fragile boy. So if I twist his arm, he'll break something. So we don't want that. 10K, we'll be doing some great stuff. But today, we're talking about the AFC South. We've been going division by division, breaking down fantasy football value, fantasy football players, who you should be drafting. And we've gotten to this division, which is one of the worst divisions in football. However, it's an interesting division to talk about because there are some diamonds in the rough, and for sure there's a lot of confusion, a lot of rookies that we kind of need to break down and analyze. So we'll give data from past seasons when we can give it. We'll give ADP when we can give it. But with some of these players, it's going to be a lot of speculation as well. So I imagine we will revisit several of these teams in August leading up to actual fantasy football drafts. But let's start with Houston, since they're the ones that got their new quarterback. They're the ones with a new coach. They're the ones looking to make one of the bigger steps up, hopefully. We'll start with CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback. Obviously, we don't know what he did last year because he wasn't in the NFL, but he's going as quarterback 25 this year. He's going as 187 overall. So he's essentially undrafted. He might be a quarterback 2 you're drafting into quarterback leagues. I'm in a weird place with him because I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, but I don't know what that optimism will yield, I guess. Like, I think he could be pretty good this year, but what does that mean?
I don't disagree with you, Zach. I think a lot of it, and maybe it's kind of just you guys see me? Is everything good? Okay.
You're good.
I'm sorry. I think a lot of it is just I don't love the offense around CJ Stroud right now. I don't love I do love the situation he's in, but I don't love the situation he's in regards to fantasy football. It seems to me it's always tough with a new year, a first year coach, rookie quarterback. It kind of feels like a transition right now. I don't necessarily expect CJ Stroud to win a championship or anything. To win anybody a fantasy football championship or anything. But like you said, Zach, I mean, they have somewhat of a favorable schedule, right? With 6 games against this division, who don't sport the greatest defenses of all time. I think CJ Stroud is a guy who you should probably have on your bench, and maybe if you're kind of in quarterback limbo throughout the year, he's a guy you can easily flip in and out, and hopefully, and I don't want to say hopefully, but I think hopefully and maybe even certainly get 13 to 21 points on any given week. So I mean, I think there's value there. I think there's something to like about CJ Stroud, but I don't necessarily know that I want to I want to put my whole team in his hands, which I don't think anybody's doing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think some of the pieces are there. Is this an offense that I'm going to love or that's going to wow anybody? No. But they have Dameon Pierce. They got Singletary. He can be the RB2. Robert Woods, he's really the only proven guy. Obviously, they have Nico Collins there, but they have a lot of talent there. Dalton Schultz, a tight end, that helps. Brevin Jordan, I think he's a little underrated too. So I think he does have some pieces around him. I think enough to make him a quarterback that you question every week of, do I pick him up? Is he a stream option? He's definitely not a drafting option, but I think within, within 3 weeks, I think we'll have a pretty good indication of who he is, as weird as that sounds in a completely new system. But I think we'll be able to tell what this offense is earlier than other rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think this offense can be pretty good. Like, even though it's a new regime that just came in, at least from a coaching staff standpoint, they're kind of building this team the right way. Their offensive line's good. I think it's
Yeah, I agree.
like they're pretty damn good offensive line. I almost wanted to say they're top 5. I'm not sure if I'd go that far, but they are top 7, 8 in the NFL. They're going to keep CJ Stroud upright and they're going to block. Offensive coordinator, a lot of the offensive schemes going to come from San Francisco. They're going to try to do a lot of those same things. It's going to be hard to replicate that running game, but I think it's going to be a strong running game. And they've done very well with generating value from a pocket passer, and which is what CJ Stroud is, what he's going to be. So he's not going to be a flashy guy, just like Brock Purdy wasn't a flashy guy. Jimmy G wasn't a flashy guy. Go back to a lot of Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks, but because they stay relatively healthy and they're steady and they have weapons and they just throw to open guys, they're good bye-week fill-ins. And in deep leagues, they can be valuable. And I think that's where CJ Stroud is. I'm not sure if we need to make any bold claims about him, but I think he's going to probably outperform quarterback 25. And that's all you kind of need to know at this point in the season.
I agree. Yeah, and I agree.
Well, I mean, real quick, we talked about the schedule. AFC South also plays the NFC South this year. So that's even better for him.
Yeah, easy schedule. Moving on to the running backs, Dameon Pierce is the RB1 in his second year. Devin Singletary comes over from Buffalo, like you said, to back him up. Currently, Dameon Pierce is going as running back 20, 49 overall. Last year, he missed 4 games, but still finished as RB27. He had 3 top 12 finishes. Devin Singletary is going as running back 46, 133 overall. Both of them are going to get run. I think Dameon Pierce is very clearly the guy. I mean, we saw him last year break 7 tackles in one play. He's a hard runner. He's a one-cut runner. He's going to be good in this 49ers-like blocking scheme, running behind a good run-blocking offensive line. So at running back 20, 49 overall, like if he's my RB2, I feel good. I feel really good.
Absolutely. I think Dameon Pierce is a guy who could end up as, a top 12 running back this week or this year and can be an RB1 for you. I think if you're getting Dameon Pierce for a running back too, you are getting incredible value. If it even happens where you can get him at a flex, I love that much more. I don't necessarily know that that's the case, but like you said, Zach, the opportunities are going to be there. I think Dameon Pierce showed enough that he can do enough to help ease CJ Stroud into this transition in the NFL. And I would imagine that gets used plentiful. I know D'Amico Ryans is the new guy in town. You have to imagine that running the ball early and often is probably high on his list of what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all the opportunities are there. I think the talent's there. I really love Dameon Pierce this year, and like you said, I think the offensive line's there. Maybe it's not the greatest thing you've ever seen, but I think it's enough to support Dameon Pierce being a top 12 player in fantasy.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, he missed 4 games last year and finished 28th in PPR, I think, for full PPR. So I'd assume those numbers not only go up by playing more games, but also go up by having a quarterback that is more feared, as much as I love Davis Mills. So he gives me a lot of, I don't think anybody's thinking Singletary is going to take really much of any of his work, probably more of a change of pace guy. So I'm all in on Pierce as well.
Yeah, running back 27, despite missing 4 games, 3 top 12 finishes on an offense that really wasn't in scoring position very often. So the offense gets better. He falls in the end zone more. All of a sudden, he's doing pretty good. 939 yards rushing his rookie year. Despite missing those 4 games, I assume we can assume he's at least an 1,100-yard rusher this year. I like Devin Singletary to get run. Again, he's running behind a good offensive line, just as good of one that he ran behind in Buffalo. Going as running back 46 feels about right to me. 133 overall is a pretty good value. He's going to be a guy that has, he's probably a 5 to 8 touch guy per game to start, maybe a little bit more. So I think he's going to exceed value right away. I'm not sure if he's going to be worth starting right away. But he is very clearly the handcuff with the other running backs there being Mike Boone, Daria Gumbawale, Jared Dokes is there, Xavier Valade. Like,
Nothing.
if you get Pierce, you might as well grab Devin Singletary in one of the final rounds.
Yep.
I like it. Wide receivers, which I think are underrated. We'll start with Nico Collins, who I'm a big fan of. He is the wide receiver going the earliest, and he's going as wide receiver 59. That's 136 overall. Last season, he averaged 9.7 PPR points per game. Everything we talk about here is going to be in PPR, by the way. But Nico Collins, 59, wide receiver off the board. The next one's John Mechie, coming back from leukemia, wide receiver 84, 221 overall. So the rest of these guys are undrafted, essentially. But Mechie was a guy we really liked coming out of the draft last year. Obviously, we haven't got to see anything from him. This is essentially his rookie year. But he's a guy that can certainly get open, certainly be good on this offense. And then we got Robert Woods going next, wide receiver 92, 255 overall. He's a massive sleeper to me. People are acting like he can't play football anymore. And I think Tennessee was a fucking toxic waste bin of an offense. It was horrendous. He was the only wide receiver worth a damn on the field. And now, people can't just game plan him out of the game. Like, for against Tennessee, he was the only player you had to cover. In Houston, that's not the case. And then finally, a player we like this year, Tank Dell, is going as wide receiver 106. He's a player CJ Stroud said he wanted on his team. We can assume he's going to be a guy he develops chemistry with right away. Tank Dell is going to be one of the easiest guys to get open in the NFL, I think, pretty much immediately. We'll see how he holds up with his body. But I bring all of them up, not because they're all fantasy relevant, but to say I think this is a pretty good receiving offense, pretty good receiving core, underrated. They have to prove themselves, but like, for sure they're underrated when the highest one is going wide receiver 59.
Yeah. There's a ton of value here. There's because someone's going to catch passes, someone's going to get yards, someone's going to score touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And we know CJ Stroud, he's gonna want to throw the air the ball out and get in the end zone that way. Proved by his Ohio State career. I think their addition of Robert Woods really helps that out a little bit. Maybe he's a step slow than he was in the Rams or Buffalo or whatever. But I think Robert Woods is still good enough where he can. I think you have to have at least more than one set of eyes on him. And I think whether it be running underneath or running that mid and hitting corner routes, whatever. So to me, the value here, Zach, is in John Mechie or Nico Collins. And to me, John Mechie is the better out of the two. I think there's less that we know about him, which gives a little bit more mystery, a little bit more excitement around it. And he's obviously shown he can play, granted by his Alabama career. So maybe I'm just excited about John Mechie, but I think that he's a vital part of this offense, and I think CJ Stroud should use him. And you guys know my thoughts on Tank Dell. I think if they get the ball in Tank Dell's hands, good things will happen. Mm-hmm. Kind of that Kadarius Toney-esque a little flair to him. I don't necessarily know that happens every single play or anything, but I do think, Zach, I do think that Tank Dell should probably be involved, a couple times a game. And I think there can be a lot of value from having Tank Dell on your team, whether that's a bench spot at the start and see what happens with this Texans offense, and then you can play it from there. Or, if you're in a real deep league, maybe not real deep, you're not going to take Tank Dell, but I think he just needs to be on your radar is what I'm saying here.
Well, I mean, let's not forget the best receiver, Amari Rodgers. But looking at Nico Collins, looking at his stats, like obviously there weren't a lot of wide receivers, so on this team that were competent, dare I say, like when Amari Rodgers is bringing down touchdowns, that kind of tells you what you need to know. But I mean, weeks 10 to 14, like they clearly made him the guy, and they clearly had confidence in him. They weren't testing anybody else out to be the guy. 10, 7, 9, 10 in the target round. So clearly they think he can be a guy. And then obviously you bring in Woods, some veteran presence. You bring in Tank Dell. Like, not all these receivers are slot receivers. You got some deep threats, some not. So like they have a nice little, it's not just a bunch of receivers doing the same thing. So I think it's going to be really tough. I feel like they're going to be a really annoying team because I don't know if any of these receivers are reliable enough to be anything more than a flex. But they are all going to help each other along with that offensive line.
Okay, so I think we all can agree Robert Woods was bad last year, right?
Yep.
Horrible fantasy year?
Yes.
He finishes wide receiver 59, which is the earliest one of these Texans players are going.
Yeah.
So if anyone can outperform what Robert Woods did last year, which I think at least 3 of them can, like I'll say that, and that's including Robert Woods. I love Robert Woods. So I'm not going to do the super annoying thing and call him Bobby Trees and act like I'm super clever. Robert Woods is a very good football player. He's going to outperform it. And this team is talented. They just got a bunch of 2s and 3s as wide receivers. They need a guy. It would be awesome if they had somebody like DeAndre Hopkins on their football team. I think that could make this offense one of the better receiving cores in the NFL, actually. If only that could come to fruition, but it cannot. So a bunch of guys to watch. I like Nico Collins. I like Robert Woods. And I think Mechie and Dell will have their weeks. We'll just have to see. But tight end now is probably the next guy you're actually looking at. Dalton Schultz comes over from the Cowboys. He's going as tight end 11, 113 overall. Last year, he missed 2 games, still finished as tight end 10. He was a top 12 tight end in 7 weeks. Pretty good. I assume he's going to be a big part of this offense. Like I said, they're trying to bring over a lot of Shanahan qualities, a lot of Shanahan scheme, which has always featured the tight end, obviously.
Yep.
And Dalton Schultz, again, obviously is one of the better pass catchers and weapons on this offense. So going as 113 overall, if I'm waiting at tight end, I absolutely love it.
Yep. I think Dalton Schultz should be a target for everyone. I don't think it should be a sit down and, okay, if he's there, I guess I'll take him. His numbers one. I think you should want Dalton Schultz. To your point, Zach, I think you can make the argument he's one of the better talented tight ends in the NFL. I mean, I think you can make an argument he's, top 5, maybe even top 3. I think Dalton Schultz is going to do so much for this really young offense, like you said, that San Francisco effect, bringing, really having tight ends involved, really having the run game involved, meaning that you're probably going to have a tight end on the field almost every single snap. And a young quarterback. It all just, maybe I'm reading too far into it. Maybe I'm too excited about it, but it all just seems like it works out to me, especially with the young quarterback. Tight ends are always a development point for young quarterbacks, especially one as good as Dalton Schultz. I would imagine that he's very involved. I would imagine that, maybe even like screenplays or comeback routes or anything are being designed for Dalton Schultz right now. I think Dameon Pierce will help them immensely, get that play action passing game going a little bit. So, Zach, I'm all in on Dalton Schultz with you. And I don't think it's too far out of the stretch of imagination to say that he can finish as a top 4 fantasy tight end this year.
Doable. Very doable.
Yeah, and, I understand Dallas likes to use their tight ends more than other teams, but he still had to get his targets in an offense that had CeeDee Lamb and a lot of talented guys. Tony Pollard took a decent amount of receptions as well. So clearly, if they're force feeding him, that's just more than them wanting to go to tight ends. That speaks to who he is as a player. And the Texans, I think they spent a decent amount of money on him. I don't remember the exact figures, but it wasn't a low ball $3 million a year offer. So clearly they believe in him. I believe in him. He's definitely there from a talent perspective. And I mean, we just talked, Zach, you and I, about, kind of Mark Andrews last show. And, a lot of things can go bad there. So when you have a top 3 as shallow as the tight end position does right now, it isn't too hard to get a top 5 position.
Not at all. And Dalton Schultz, yeah, he got paid this offseason, at least a decent amount. He was franchise tagged the year before that. So obviously he was negotiating with the Cowboys and they thought his worth was high enough to franchise tag him to get paid similar money to, the Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce's of the world. That was obviously a 1-year thing, but still, he's a talented guy. I don't think he's an elite athlete, which I think is why he gets lost in the mix in terms of how people grade him. But I think he does everything well. And when you do everything well, you're going to see a lot of snaps. Snaps lead to opportunity. Opportunity leads to productivity. So it's all there for Dalton Schultz. To your point, Luke, I like it a lot. And then if we're giving our best sleepers and values, I have a feeling one of you two will go with Dalton Schultz. So I'll go with Robert Woods. I like both of them a lot, though.
I'll take Dalton Schultz then. Sorry to jump out of each other.
I'll go Dameon Pierce at 27 or whatever. That's not too hard to beat at all.
And to be honest, everyone hates the Texans, right? The last couple of years for good reason. They sucked it, whatever. But those 3 players we named, I think, are 3 probably startable players throughout most of the year this year.
They will for sure. They will absolutely. We'll move on to another team with a rookie quarterback. The Indianapolis Colts, a team that I think it was ESPN deemed them as one of the worst rosters in the NFL. I would say they're very close to being contenders already. I like the roster quite a bit. I think they're a pretty good team, actually. But we'll start with the rookie. A lot of it falls on his shoulders. Anthony Richardson. A lot of people were wondering if he would get drafted to a place where he could sit for a year. Instead, he goes to Indianapolis, where he's going to play right away, which means there's going to be a lot of growing pains. So should you go for that in fantasy football? I'm not sure. Currently getting drafted as quarterback 17, 126 overall. I mean, he's an athlete. He is willing to run. And I will say if he runs whatsoever and he's going into an offense that has the head coach that was coaching the Eagles offense last year. So I think we're going to see a lot of the same schemes and stuff, which allowed Jalen Hurts to run wild. I think Anthony Richardson's legs alone can keep him around that 17 value. I don't think he's necessarily a steal, but I think that's good value for him.
Yeah. I don't want to say, because of the superstar season Justin Fields had last year or anything, I don't want to say that, that's what Anthony Richardson's going to be. But I would imagine, I would think it's something along the lines of that, right? Obviously, Anthony Richardson's, I don't want to say his weakness either, but, something that probably needs to be worked on is turning into an NFL passer, right? We know the running skills are there. I would imagine Indianapolis is thinking of a ton of plays to get him out moving right now and maybe pick up a couple wins and build a little running offense here, reminiscent of a Baltimore offense or maybe even a Philadelphia offense, even Chicago, right? So I would guess the ceiling for Anthony Richardson is think of if Justin Fields had a good year last year, not the superstar year that he had. That would be my ceiling for him, and I think that's worthy of a QB 17 pick, right? Running's always going to get you more points. Well, not always going to get you more points in passing, but will get you immediately more points in passing, right? And I think Anthony Richardson does a lot of running. I think with Jonathan Taylor, they're bringing linebackers in and up. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Anthony Richardson to run here. I know I shouldn't only be talking about running, but to me, that's what Anthony Richardson is in fantasy football this year. And I do think that he can be somewhat of a contributor. But I don't know if the passing game comes, but I think running alone, he probably ends up a top 17, top 20 quarterback this year. So I'm cool if you're drafting him there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is a route where this Indianapolis Colts offense is just a pain in the ass to go up against. Like if their offensive line can be decent, you have Jonathan Taylor, now you have a running quarterback. Obviously, I'm not completely sold on Pittman, Downs, and the Pierce wide receiver tree, but that could be decent enough. Like this could be tough. I mean, when we're talking fantasy, though, I kind of agree with Luke in terms of his ceiling. Justin Fields, if he had a good year last year, not a whatever that was, blow up. Running is tough. It's tough to not be productive when you're a running quarterback. Like you have to really be bad as a quarterback when you're running the ball. And I don't know a lot about him, Richardson, in terms of the NFL because we haven't seen him play. But I wouldn't be surprised with the inexperience if he wants to go back to basics and tuck it and run more. And if that happens, we're talking a Lamar Jackson type quarterback in, that kind of play style. And that's always going to be productive as long as he doesn't fumble every carry.
Yeah, his passing is so deficient at the current moment. I'm not sure if there's any deep ball mid-range throw that's there for him in his rookie year. And if it is, I wouldn't bet any amount of money that he could do 2 times in a row. That being said, I liked Jalen Hurts a lot last year, and I even said then I don't think he's an elite passer by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And I still don't think he is, even though he just went to the Super Bowl, was an MVP-like player last year. I think they are going to develop ways to get Anthony Richardson really easy throws. I think they have the players to do so. So if he plays a full season, there's no doubt in my mind he finishes top 17.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Now moving to the other player in the backfield, you already said him, Jonathan Taylor. Bad year last year. Offensive line terrible, passing game terrible, everything terrible in this offense last year. And Jonathan Taylor really suffered as a result. He missed 6 games, finished running back 33, but even on a per game basis, he was running back 23. He's going as running back 4 this year, 10th overall. And we'll talk about the other two guys quickly, but we need to talk about Jonathan Taylor on his own. After last year, are you willing to take him 10th overall, Luke?
I think I am. There's a lot of weirdness going around the Colts last year, right? With the whole quarterback transition and coaches and yada yada. I really like Jonathan Taylor as a running back, and I think you guys are on that same boat. Maybe there's bias, but I think in football terms, we're all Jonathan Taylor fans. Obviously, Indianapolis's offensive line isn't as strong as it once was, but I don't necessarily think it's bad by any means. I think they have a good enough defense to keep the offense in the game, and I think too, like I've said before with Anthony Richardson, I think his running alone too helps Jonathan Taylor. I think that kind of works in pairs there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think all eyes are probably going to be on Anthony Richardson, and I don't want to say Jonathan Taylor is going to slip through the cracks, but I think he's a guy that needs to be game plan for. I'm sure he will be, but some of that is going to have to go to Anthony Richardson now. Jonathan Taylor had a bad year last year based on where you drafted him. In reality, he didn't have the worst year in running back history or anything like that. It just wasn't up to par. If that's Jonathan Taylor's floor, I love what his ceiling is. I love drafting him here again. I think the Colts, like you said, Zach, ESPN ranked them low. Zach, you're high on them. I think Colts have an opportunity to compete in this division. It seems like Jacksonville is going to lock this up, but if the Colts want to compete, Jonathan Taylor has to be involved. So that's part of the reason why I'm in on Jonathan Taylor. I think you can do much worse than him at the 10th pick.
Yeah, I love him there too. I mean, because that's also where the draft starts flipping around. So we're talking to Jonathan Taylor, maybe a Devontae Adams, unlikely but possible. I mean, and the thing for me is, it's very clear the team wants to get him the ball. Like, it's not like he went down because they wanted to get so and so more involved. They wanted to get him the ball, and he played, I think, 10 games over 50% of the snaps. 4 of them he was a top 13 RB. So I'm not saying that's great. Obviously, we want to see more from him. Some of his bad games were very bad, but the offensive line is going to be better. They have a quarterback in the sense that there's a threat there. It might not be with his arm, but there's a threat. And injury history, I just don't see it happening again. You can't count on him getting injured again. There's no reason to say he would. So take all those things in consideration, and the fact that he finds a way to have a nose for the end zone at every point with this team. I love him at RB10.
Yeah, it's important to remember that Jonathan Taylor, he missed a few games last year, but he also played hurt a lot as well, which hurt him. So again, 3 guys from Wisconsin here. Keep that in mind. I think Jonathan Taylor is one of the better pure runners in the NFL.
Yep.
I think that offensive line is still pretty bad. I think with even average coaching, they can at least run block, which they couldn't do last year for whatever reason until Jeff Saturday came. He fixed them a little bit, but it's just highest paid offensive line. They completely were disinterested in playing football. So we'll see what they do this year. I don't hate Jonathan Taylor at that spot. I think he absolutely can perform like he did 2 years ago. However, there's other running backs I like more than him.
Yeah, right.
He's going ahead of Saquon Barkley, who I think is a toss-up for me. He's going ahead of Nick Chubb, and I definitely like Chubb more.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So I think he's a little overvalued. I think you can dial it back a little bit, but I don't hate him there. I just, don't think he's a great value. The other 2 guys, Zach Moss is there. I have no idea if Zach Moss is going to see touches or even make the team. I'm not sure. I don't think he's that great at football. I think he's fine at football. No idea. I have no idea about Zach Moss, but you're not drafting him. The rookie there is Evan Hull, who I like a lot. And he should be the Nyheim Hines. He should be the change of pace. He should be the receiving back. He should be a player that we have seen have success in the Philadelphia scheme quite a bit. We have seen that player have success in the Indianapolis Colts uniform. And I think he can slide in and do that right away. As long as he can pass protect, which I do believe he can decently. But yeah, Evan Hull is going to be a guy I think you need to keep an eye on. He's not a handcuff. If Jonathan Taylor goes down, he's not going to see the bulk of the carries, but he's a guy that I think has a role on this offense week in and week out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. And you know, I don't necessarily, you know, I don't love the Indianapolis Colts. I don't hate their running game at all. And this is kind of wrapping it all up with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, right? The perfect complement to that, Zach, is a Nyheim Hines. And I always love when teams bring on rookie running backs because I've always said, you know, running back is, I don't want to say it's an easy position to play, but running back, I think you can get going quick. If you can hit a hole hard, if you can read a defense, I think there's a place for you in the NFL. And I think rookie running backs kind of have that idea of, let's take some tread off of Jonathan Taylor's tires here. Let's take some tread off of Anthony Richardson's tires here. So I'm with you. I think Hall's totally involved. I think he's someone that should be drafted. And I think that if he's not, I think it's someone that needs to be picked up right after the draft. Indianapolis, to me, needs to get their run game going to stay competitive, and I would imagine that includes Hall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, at the very least, this is a team that was able to make Marlon Mack look good, and he is now jobless, I think, in the NFL. Obviously, he had some injuries in there, but anybody that can make Marlon Mack look good, that can have for as good as Jonathan Taylor is, that can have any running back run for 1,800 yards and 18 touchdowns. You know, we've seen success with their change of pace backs before. I have the most confidence in their room. I have the most confidence that they know that they can't, you know, just give Jonathan Taylor 30 carries and 5, you know, receptions a game. So there's going to be a role for him because Moss isn't the guy, and Deion Jackson isn't the guy either. So it's his kind of role at RB2, and I think there's no reason to think he won't be successful at it.
I agree. Moving on to the wide receivers, which have more question marks. Michael Pittman Jr. is going first out of the three, or we'll talk about four, but three are getting drafted. Michael Pittman Jr. is going as wide receiver 28, which is 59 overall. He missed one game last year and still finished as wide receiver 20. He had 5 weeks as a top 20 wide receiver. Might as well talk about all three at the same time. Alec Pierce is entering his second year. He's going as wide receiver 68, 174 overall. So he's essentially undrafted. And he was wide receiver 63 last year. Super inconsistent. They didn't really know how to use him, especially with the changing of coaches mid-year, which makes a lot of sense. I don't think you can read anything into Alec Pierce's rookie year. And then they drafted Josh Downs, sort of a speedster, nice slot player in the draft this year. He's going as wide receiver 86. So super undrafted for him as well. But he's a guy who a lot of people regarded as one of the more NFL-ready wide receivers in the draft. He just plays a very specific position. You're not going to split him out or anything. But I say that to say that he's definitely going to have a spot on this offense. The other guy, which you guys don't even need to mention if you don't want to, but Isaiah McKenzie is also here, coming over from Buffalo, and he was pretty good with Buffalo. So interesting to keep an eye on, but I do think that's going to be Josh Downs' job. But what do you think about these three, Luke?
Yeah, I've been on the other side of Michael Pittman the last couple of years. I've always said, I just don't know, right? I don't know about Michael Pittman. The quarterback's always kind of been weird. I think he's proven that he can play with bad quarterback play, as we've seen the last couple of years. I think that he's probably the number one target for a rookie. I'm trying to think for a rookie quarterback right now. And I think his big frame and being able to kind of open up the defense a little bit, I think should be very valuable in this Colts offense. Is he going to see, 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns or anything? Probably not. Maybe Michael Pittman's more floating around the 800 and 8 touchdown kind of mark. But I don't necessarily dislike that. I think if he can be the number one guy for a rookie quarterback, I think you're in for a long haul. Alec Pierce, I'm still kind of weary on. Zach, I know you've talked very high of him the last couple of years. And I'm still kind of weary on him. I'm with him. I'm with him, though. I like what I've seen. But Josh Downs, I've always said it. You guys have always heard me say it. I love when a rookie quarterback and a rookie receiver get drafted together. I think there's a lot of room for development like that. I think there's a lot of chemistry building right there. Guys coming in the same age. I don't necessarily expect Josh Downs to be to be really hugely fantasy relevant. But I do like what can be built there. In terms of, I guess, all the Colts receiving options, the one I'm most interested in, I think it's the one probably everyone's most interested in, is Michael Pittman. I hope he doesn't, take a bad downslide if Anthony Richardson can't throw the ball. But he's another guy who is just too good to be not involved in an offense.
Yeah, and the quarterbacks have tried to get him involved. 129 to 141 targets over the last 2 years. Receptions are nowhere near that because of quarterback play. But I mean, he's another guy, and we see him all around in fantasy. Pittman is, where they're not a sexy name. Clearly not a wide receiver one. Nobody's talking about that, but people just don't like him for whatever reason. And where he is, he's going to beat the ADP he's at currently, unless he gets injured. Like, that's the only way I can see it. And you look at the other wide receivers around him. I'm not completely sold on Alec Pierce. I've liked some flashes. Josh Downs, I like. I mean, they definitely have more talent in this receiving room than in years past. So anything that can help defense is key, and less on Pittman, I'm all in for. And I think that's exactly what they have now. Granted, Anthony Richardson's arm is going to be a question, but that's something that I don't think should hurt Pittman too much.
Sure. And Zach Espinoza in the chat says the Colts were the slowest and most boring offense he saw, talking about last year's team. And not wrong. I mean, this is a team that they couldn't pass because there weren't receivers, and teams just blitzed them because no one was blocking. Matt Ryan got the absolute piss kicked out of him. He had no shot to even be an average quarterback last year because he got thrown around ridiculously. And then as a result, they couldn't run either because they weren't blocking. They weren't doing anything. They just loaded the box. And it was a disaster, complete disaster. They didn't even play their best players. It was so stupid. It was hard to watch. But yeah, so these receivers, I have talked highly on Alec Pierce. I still think he's a good wide receiver. This is a situation, as we've seen a lot over the years, it just sucks because it's a second-year guy, and it's a new coach, new regime, kind of. General manager's still there, but new coach, new offense. And it was the last coach, the last offense that wanted him and had a fit for him. This new offense drafted another wide receiver.
Right.
So which one do you think they're going to favor? They're probably going to favor the guy they just drafted. So that's the hard part. Michael Pittman, what does he do well? He works the mid-range really well. What did I just say 10 minutes ago? I mean, Anthony Richardson can't complete mid-range throws. So that would be the downside for Michael Pittman this year. He's not that good at football. He's a number 2. He's okay. Right. He's fine. Yeah. He's fine. Like, if I was ranking the top 50 wide receivers, he'd be around the 30 mark. Like, that's where he is for me.
Fair.
He's okay.
Yeah.
He's not good at anything. He's kind of an immature player. Like, he is what it is. He's going to be fine. He's going to see targets because he's the best receiver on this team. Alec Pierce, I don't know how they're going to use him. Hopefully they don't just have him run fly routes, go routes on the outside, because Richardson will not hit those either. Hopefully they use him in the slot some, work the middle, do stuff like that, which he's more than capable of doing. For that reason, I'm, again, cautiously optimistic, I suppose, but, saying what I hope they use Alec Pearson is what Josh Downs excels at. Yeah. So I think Josh Downs can excel as being that security blanket underneath. He has to. Like, that's why they drafted him. That's how they should use him. So he could be a target monster. We'll see. At wide receiver 86, he's someone to keep your eye on because he's good at football. Isaiah McKenzie can play that role very well as well. So if Josh Downs doesn't get the job done, I think there is a short leash, actually.
I don't disagree.
Tight ends, Mo Alley-Cox is still there. Hopefully new regime means they play him less. Jelani Woods is a fucking monster, and he is an athletic freak. He's 6'7".
Yep.
Just throw it up to him. Yep. He's going as tight end 31, 231 overall, so super undrafted. He played only 4 games last year of over 40% of the snaps. Makes zero sense whatsoever because he can block. He's an athletic freak. When they threw it up to him, he caught touchdowns. This is a guy, if you're saying one tight end can break out this year, everyone's saying an AFC South tight end. They're all saying Chigakonkwo, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Mm-hmm. Why not Jelani Woods? He has all the physical assets. He's playing in an offense that wants to use the tight end, and he should be the tight end one. I really, really like Jelani Woods.
I
It
do
makes
too.
too much sense to me.
And I think and continue to go along with this idea of throwing to rookie or tight ends for rookie quarterbacks. You're not getting many more big target or many bigger targets than a 6'7" Jelani Woods, especially like you said, Zach, with Anthony Richardson's kind of erratic throwing motion, right? Maybe Jelani Woods gets a little gets a little involved and makes some plays for Anthony Richardson this year, which would be awesome to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, new regime, so kind of take it with a grain of salt also when they were clearly eliminated. But for the last 6 weeks of last year, he played 50% or more of the snaps. He did that no times prior to week 11. So I'd like to think they found something there. Clearly, when they get him the ball, he produces. He's one of those guys you don't even have to get him the ball 20 yards downfield. You can give it to him at the line of scrimmage. He'll make a way to make a play. So he's a good player. It's just whether they want to give him the ball, really. I mean, if they force it to him, he'll be fine. But a lot of teams don't like to do that anymore.
No, but I mean, this is a team that will use the tight end. They have to.
They have to.
So,
I'm sorry.
Optimistic.
I'm sorry to cut off, but right off the bat, did you see what tight end he was going?
Tight end 31.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's not going.
Right.
That's the thing. So, yeah. If you're in a 16-team league, if you're in a 2 tight end league, definitely go for him. If you're in a 12-team regular league, you're probably not drafting him. There's no reason to. But he's someone you definitely should keep your eye on.
Yep.
And if you want to stash him, I think it could pay off.
I think Jelani Woods might have, an opportunity to kind of be a big-time pickup later in the season and maybe help win a championship, someone like a Juwan Johnson last year or something like that.
For sure. And, I mean, he's going to –
I had to do it, Trevor. Sorry.
People are going to talk about Jelani Woods, though, in training camp, and they're going to – I mean, I'm going to describe somebody, and everyone knows one of the content creators I'm talking about, but they're going to talk about, like, did you know that there's a 6'7" monster who's an athletic freak? Let's look at his college stats. Like, yeah, we know who Jelani Woods is. I've watched football before. Right. He's good at football. I can't make the throw to him. Someone has to make the throw to him. I can't do it. So, like, as long as they choose to do it, he's going to be good this year. He's one of those players drafted by the old regime. This is a second-year player. However, he is too good to pass up, and there's no competition. Right. Mo Alley-Cox isn't going to do jack shit. Hopefully they don't pick up Cameron Brate, because Cameron Brate's the type of player who loves to ruin my hopes and dreams at tight end positions.
I know that feeling, Zach. That's how I am with Mo Alley-Cox. I have him on every single team every year. He just ends up on my team.
Stupid.
And if you are one of the people that's drafting in 2 tight end leagues, at this rate in fantasy football, reevaluate your leagues. Tight ends are garbage. I'm all for having no tight ends in a league. 2 tight ends in a league, like we can't let that happen.
I have an idea. Only tight ends.
I'm fine with doing that. If that's our gimmick league this year, I'm cool with it.
That'd be interesting. That'd be
fun. We should have a reverse league.
A reverse league?
What is that?
Yeah. So I'm just pulling shit out of my ass, but like, how you have the positions where you have the most players, you have the least. So 1 wide receiver, 1 running back, 2 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, and 2 kickers, and 2 defenses.
We could.
That'd be something.
It would be difficult. We could do it.
I think that'd be fun.
That would be kind of fun. Can you imagine sitting in front of your TV and going, yes, Mo Alley-Cox 5-yard reception, baby. I'm ready to go.
I'm more than happy having like 30-something tight ends on teams, like as a league. Like I like the obscure tight ends. Yeah. You know me. Every year, I love talking about tight ends when we do our ranking shows. And I'm the only person. No viewer wants to listen to us talk about tight ends, but I like to do it. So he's going to be one of those players, I think.
We can talk about the logistics later, but it would be very fun to have. To kind of need tight ends to win a league. It'd be mass chaos.
What if? Okay, really quick. If you start 3 tight ends, one of them has to catch a touchdown. If they don't in a week, you're disqualified.
No tight end points, Sean.
And then the best part is, if
Could
you
do
have
that.
3 tight ends, you're going to see some like, I have 2 running backs. I don't need them both. I'll give you Aaron Jones for Jawan Johnson.
Right.
I'm cool with it.
All right.
I'm cool with it.
Put a pin in it.
And also, Scott Fishbowl starts, very soon. Tight end points are juiced. You're drafting a bunch of tight ends. If you're in Scott Fishbowl and you're watching this, Jelani Woods is one of those guys. Like, you need to target. He's going to go late. That's one of those leagues that he's actually going to go. So go ahead and draft him. Talking about the best sleeper, best value pick on the Colts. Again, it's between a few players for me. I like Evan Hull, but I have to go Jelani Woods with how I'm talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the pick here, right? I think maybe on ceiling alone, I'll give it to Anthony Richardson. I think he can be a contributor to your team.
As much as I want to go Juwan Winfrey or Brashad Perriman, I'm going to go Anthony Richardson too.
Moving on to the Jags, the team projected to win the division. We got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. He is going as quarterback 8, which is 65 overall. Last season, he finished as quarterback 8. He had 10 top 12 weeks, so, relatively consistent. Obviously, Doug Peterson really helped him there. What do you think about drafting Trevor Lawrence as a top 10 guy? Again, 65 overall. Are you willing to do it?
Probably not, to be honest. I'm a huge Trevor Lawrence guy. You guys know my love for him. I think the Jags are they're a very fun team. They're on the upward trajectory, to say the least, right? Based on kind of they came back in that game against the Chargers in the playoffs last year, right? That was kind of a fun game, or late in the season or something like that. Yeah, but I think
the thing of all time. Fuck the Chargers.
I think there are building blocks there, and I think people are just pushing the gas too quickly on Trevor Lawrence. And maybe he does break out and become whatever the breakout this year. I'm not willing to risk that spot on him right now. I think 65 is probably way too high for 8 quarterbacks to go. And for that reason alone, I think I might be out on Trevor Lawrence this year. Obviously, if you're still in the midst of a dynasty startup draft or anything like that, absolutely take Trevor Lawrence early. But in regards to redraft, there's still a little bit more I want to see out of Trevor Lawrence before putting so much of my draft into him. And I think a lot of people are with that with me. I also think there's a lot of people that are going to overvalue him and probably going to take him ahead of that 65 draft spot. I would rather be on the other side of that and not be that guy. And I think everyone who plays fantasy football should kind of have that opinion. The Jags are fun. The Trevor Lawrence is fun, but winning a fantasy football championship is much more fun.
True. Yeah, I'm not buying Lawrence here. Everybody talks about how great this offense is with Etienne. Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, great weapons. Guess what? Ridley and Ingram can't stay healthy. So when inevitably they go down, now we're talking about an offense with Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Parker Washington, Jamal Agnew, hell of a returner. I don't think he's much of a wide receiver. So I like him. I like Lawrence. I think he's a little overhyped. I think assuming these weapons are going to get through the season and these weapons are even going to be here by week 7, I think that's a pretty big ask seen from what we've seen in the past from these guys. I'm not saying he's a guy you don't want to have. I'm not saying he's a guy you shouldn't even draft, but where he's currently being drafted, I just can't trust it.
Yeah, I don't think he really takes steps backwards. So,
Right.
if you're saying he's ranked quarterback 8, I think that's fine. It is what it is. I just don't value him much higher or maybe higher at all than Deshaun Watson, who's going 22 spots later.
Right.
So if you're saying I can get a quarterback I like just as much 2 rounds later, I'm going to do that. Tua's going 30 spots later. I'd rather roll the dice on Tua, I think, and have him for a couple of healthy weeks. Kirk Cousins is there. I mean, Dak Prescott's going after him too, around 2 rounds after him as well. So I just don't need to do it. I also am not super impressed with their offensive line. I'm a little bit worried about their offensive line, which can mess absolutely everything up, obviously. But in terms of weapons, and we'll talk about them, I mean, obviously the Jaguars' weapons are great.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching is great. And theoretically, Trevor Lawrence should be getting better right now. So I don't think he takes any steps backwards. If you like how he did last year, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. He's not going to be on any of my fantasy teams because I'm not going to spend a 5th or 6th round pick on him.
That's where my head's at. I'd love to have him, but I don't want him there.
Right. Running backs, we got 2. Travis Etienne, obviously, is the star. Running back 13 he's going as, which is 33 overall. Last year he finished as running back 17. He had only 4 top 12 weeks. I think he may surrender some carries this year. We'll talk about them both, I guess. They drafted Tank Bigsby. He's currently going as running back 48, 148 overall. So, I mean, I could see a scenario where Tank Bigsby sort of splits the early down snaps with Etienne. Etienne's clearly the third down guy. But I think Bigsby has a role. I think they need to kind of pound the rock with him a little bit. They need Etienne to stay healthy. So if Etienne's going as running back 13, that's a little high for me.
Yeah,
I don't love it.
I don't love it. Etienne to me is not the, and I'm just pulling up his stats here from last year. I mean, he had 3 games over 20 carries last year without much, without much dissension in the backfield there. To me, Etienne is not a workhorse running back. He's not a Derrick Henry who's going to get you 30 carries a game. I think with Etienne, to get your points are going to come out what he does with the ball, and I think Etienne's awesome with the ball in his hands. I love Trevor Lawrence with him. But to say, Zach, that what did you say he's running back 13?
Yeah, running back 13, 33 overall.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see the opportunities there to warrant a running back 13 spot. Like I said, I like the rookie they brought in, and I think he steals carries. I also think Doug Peterson loves to pass the ball. I think Trevor Lawrence steals carries. I think a lot of Doug Peterson's offense goes on kind of how the quarterback goes, and I think Trevor Lawrence is probably going to dictate where this offense kind of goes this year. And I don't love that from a running back who I probably have to spend a 3rd round pick on to get. I'm not saying Etienne is not going to be a top 20 running back this year. I just don't see him being a top 5, not even really a top 10 running back this year. I just don't love the opportunities from Etienne. I love him as a player, just don't love the opportunities. And I think he might even be a guy that, unless he falls to me, I might stay away from this year.
Yeah, his ceiling is low. To me, his floor is low. I love him as a player. I love what he does with the ball, but he's not a workhorse. And, I know he's not going RB1 territory, probably even RB2 territory. But, I mean, even at an RB3 territory, I think there are guys who get the ball more and you can trust to have more touches than him. I love Tank Bigsby. Really have no reason to, probably just for the name. But I like him from what I've read about him. I like what he could probably bring to this team. The Jaguars never feel like a team under Peterson that'll go to just one guy and be a single faceted in any plan of the offense, any part. So they're going to utilize multiple backs. They're obviously going to utilize multiple receivers, more mouths to feed. I think their offense is fine, but I don't think it improves that much. So it could get scary real quick. A lot of ways this could go wrong with Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not as hesitant as you are, but like I just don't see the upside. Like if I'm drafting somebody that high, I need to know there's a chance he's going to have upside, and I don't see the upside with him. I think he's going to be fine. I think he has protected touches. I think he has a protected role. To your point, he's not a workhorse. I think Tank Bigsby probably has, in an ideal role, in an ideal world, maybe like 6 to 10 touches per game. Like I think he's going to be involved. I think there's a chance they use him and Etienne in a pretty even split in the red zone. So yeah, there's Etienne's going ahead of Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Jahmyr Gibbs, Dalvin Cook, J.K. Dobbins, Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders. All those guys possibly have bigger roles than what Etienne will have on a per game basis. So I don't love it at all.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, we got Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones. Christian Kirk leading the bunch. He is going as wide receiver 25, 56 overall. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 12. He had 9 top 20 weeks. I say top 20 because he's going as wide receiver 25 despite being wide receiver 12 last year. So Christian Kirk, yes, Calvin Ridley joins the offense. People are kind of treating Christian Kirk almost as the wide receiver 2 now. Ridley's going as wide receiver 29, 61 overall. So they're essentially going the same place. So my question to you guys is, do you like Kirk or Ridley more? and do you like them at their values?
I like Christian Kirk more. I think, right? I'm a big Calvin Ridley guy. The whole thing is, we haven't seen Calvin Ridley in a year. I know that's always that's an easy answer, Luke. But whatever. I mean, I think it's true. I mean, Christian Kirk was awesome last year. He was wide receiver. You said he's wide receiver 12. That's basically a wide receiver 1 for a 12-team league, right? I'm still in on Christian Kirk. I think there's a lot that he did to this offense that really helped it move. I think he was really Trevor Lawrence. It kind of looked like he was kind of the first look in the red zone most of the times, kind of once they got past the 50-yard line. I think Christian Kirk has a very valuable role in this offense, and I would rather have him than Calvin Ridley. Not saying that Calvin Ridley, doesn't do anything. It's just that fact of I haven't seen Calvin Ridley in over 365 days here. I've seen Kirk dominate. I've had him dominate for me. I'm still in on Kirk, and like I said before, I think Doug Peterson is trying to pass the ball, and I think you can get much worse passers than Trevor Lawrence, who, in my opinion, is actually a really good passer. So I'm with Christian Kirk this year. I think he has better opportunities to get open. I think he's a better route runner. I think he just has a little bit more gel with Trevor Lawrence right now.
Yeah, I'm taking Christian Kirk too. I mean, it's also not like Ridley was with Trevor Lawrence before the suspension either. This is a completely new quarterback. Now I understand, they're not going to be meeting each other for the first time week 1. That's not how that works. But obviously, there's something between Kirk and Lawrence. Kirk has been a playmaker, really, wherever he's gone. Anybody that can make Kyler Murray look good in my book. So I like him. They love going to him in the red zone at times too, which I like to see as well. So I'm going Kirk, and Ridley, his injury history, I think, also needs to be questioned a little bit. Obviously, injuries are tough to predict, but with him, it's a hell of a lot easier historically. So I'm going Kirk here.
For whatever it's worth, out of OTAs, people have said Calvin Ridley looks unbelievable.
I'm sure he does.
He apparently looks the most explosive on the field. Looks like the wide receiver 1. And again, I can't stress this enough. Like, we're talking about people who aren't educated in football, reporting on players catching and running routes on air. How explosive are you when you're catching a warm-up throw? Like, that's what it is. So I don't know. I need to see it with my own eyes. Calvin Ridley's a damn good football player. Oh. So in my opinion, actually, if both of these guys stay healthy, I think they probably both outperform their ADP. I think this could be one of the better wide receiver duos in the NFL. I think Calvin Ridley may fit the Doug Peterson offensive scheme a little bit better than Christian Kirk, in my personal opinion. So, again, big if he stays healthy. But if he stays healthy, he might be the better value at wide receiver 61. I think Kirk is probably the safer option. Wide receiver 29 for Ridley, 61 overall. I think Kirk's probably the safer option at wide receiver 25. But I value both players as wide receiver 2s. I like them both.
They both have to be involved. They're both too good not to be involved. And I guess and I know we have tight end here, but just to kind of wrap a receiver to the quarterback here, I think we're all in agreement. We'd rather have one of those guys at that early 60 spot than Trevor Lawrence there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. They're all going right there. Then the third wide receiver is kind of the odd man out now, is Zay Jones. He is going as wide receiver 58. 135 overall. He was wide receiver 26 last year. So yeah, like I'm saying, both Kirk and Ridley again are going as wide receiver 25 and 29. They finished, Kirk and Zay Jones finished as wide receiver 12 and 26. That's why I'm saying I think both of these guys could finish above 25 quite easily.
Yep.
I do think Zay Jones is too good to not be involved. I think he's still going to be involved. He had 121 targets last year. I think he could live around that 75, 85 mark. So I think he's going to be relevant some weeks. He's probably a wide receiver 4 or 5. Probably don't need to draft him, but I think he's a value pick at the end of drafts if you're looking to bolster your wide receiver depth.
Yeah, I do think that I agree 100% with you. I don't necessarily know that he needs to be drafted, right? A lot of those targets are going to go to, I would imagine, Calvin Ridley, right? I'm 100% with you on him. I don't know. I don't want to say it, it's kind of a flash in the pan kind of thing, but you're right, Zach. He's too good to be involved. I'm just hoping we haven't seen the best of Zay Jones, which probably we have. But I don't know. I don't love Zay Jones, but I don't hate having him on my team.
Sure.
I think you guys pretty much covered it there.
Tight end Evan Engram going as tight end 996 overall, finished as tight end 5 last year at 8 top 12 weeks. Super involved. They also drafted rookie Brenton Strange out of Penn State. I think he's probably at least a year away, but I think he might be Jacksonville's tight end 1 plan for the future. I think he's more of a do-it-all sort of tight end than Evan Engram, so I think ignore him for this year. But Evan Engram, last few years has been relatively healthy. Before that, he was an injury risk. He had drops, had all of that. So what do you think is more realistic? Like, again, tight end 5 last year. He's going as tight end 9 this year. So I don't think people are fully bought in. So do you like him at 96 overall, Luke, or what's your thoughts? It's hard to talk about.
Yeah, he is hard to talk about. And I think I'm bought in as tight end 9. I don't necessarily know that he's a tight end 5 by any means. I don't necessarily know he's a tight end 6 or 7. Obviously, the big thing with Evan Engram is, consistency. He looked bad at times with the Giants. He looked great at times with the Giants. He looked awesome last year in relative to what we've seen out of Evan Engram. Is that sustainable? I think that it is. And I think Evan Engram, while I don't think that he sees as many, doesn't see as much work as he did last year. I think he sees more opportune work this year, right? I think he's the one who benefits from Calvin Ridley coming in and kind of playing, who can kind of take over a receiving offense. I don't know that Evan Engram, finishes. I don't know. In my opinion, Evan Engram is a valuable piece of this Jaguars offense. I just think at this point, he's probably the 4th option right now. But I don't think that he's totally phased out of the offense, because I think he needs to be in the offense for it to go, based on what we saw last year. Doug Peterson loves tight ends with what he did at Philadelphia and everywhere he's been. So I would imagine Evan Engram is somewhat involved. And I think exploiting the middle of the field, I don't know that there's many better that do it when they're on their A game than Evan Engram.
I love him here. One of the biggest things I always talk about with tight ends is opportunity cost. Mostly for the higher up guys, like, the Mark Andrews, Dawson Knox, depending on where they're getting drafted. Like, they're good, but guess what? For where they're being drafted, they're not worth it. For where he's being drafted, I think he's completely worth it. Like, I look at it, I don't know exactly who's being drafted around him, but around the 95 mark, it's not going to be anybody really good. So I look at the 95 mark and I say, what has a possibility to be more valuable to my team? A tight end who could be a top 5 tight end week to week, could be an absolute game changer in fantasy, or kind of a backup running back that rides the bench most of the year. I'm going to go with Engram, which says a lot because I don't like him as a player. He's burned me a lot of times, but the 95 spot, like, I don't think there are many better options. Like, I don't think there's anybody at 95 that can win you multiple weeks.
Yeah, he's getting drafted just behind Gabe Davis, Pat Freiermuth, and Jordan Addison, just ahead of Tua, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Brian Robinson, Christian Kirk, David Njoku, Jamal Williams. So players that definitely have value.
Yeah, there's some in that pack that I like more than Evan Engram. There's also some that I like a lot less than Evan Engram. So it's a weird spot. And a starting tight end in the 10th round, I don't think is terrible.
No, not terrible. This is a Doug Peterson offense that has utilized the tight end heavily over the years. Obviously, we know Zach Ertz's name because of Philadelphia, and that was the Doug Peterson system. So I think he's going to be used. I don't trust him. That's why I'm happy to see that he's going as tight end 996. To your point, Trevor, I still don't trust him. But here's the target breakdown last year. So Christian Kirk had 133, Zay Jones 121. Evan Engram had 98, and then Marvin Jones had 81. So let's just assume Christian Kirk keeps the same, 133. I think Calvin Ridley could pick up Zay Jones's 121. And then between Engram's 98, Marvin Jones's 81, I think they both kind of split that, like to be around both 90 probably. I think Evan Engram might see a little bit less work this year. I think he still has a role that is relatively safe on the team as long as he is healthy. But yeah, I think he's a startable tight end this year.
Yep.
So not bad. Best value pick on the Jags for me is probably Tank Bigsby. I'll go with him.
Yeah, it probably is. It just with the Jags, it seems like the players that are relevant, and the players that aren't relevant aren't really relevant. I think either one of those receivers can finish top 15 receiver this year. So I'll take the easy way out and say give me one of those guys. If you put a gun to my head, I'll say Christian Kirk.
I'm going to think outside the box. If you have a return league, Jamal Agnew. I think he's the best returner we've seen in a long time.
He's up there.
You better hope he makes the team.
Yeah, he won't do anything in the passing game. Don't get me wrong, but I love seeing him return kicks.
He might not make the team.
He's got it. Don't worry.
He'll make a team somewhere.
Okay, sure. He's a sleeper because he might not be playing on the Jags.
Yeah.
In real honesty, though, I can't wait to watch Evan Ingram throw a touchdown this year.
God, if they put that much faith in Evan Ingram, Doug Peterson's got bigger balls than me. I would not do it.
It feels like Dan Arnold could have threw a touchdown last year, Trevor.
No, damn, watch it. Oh, now let me ask you a question. Would you be more confident in Evan Ingram throwing a touchdown or David Bakhtiari catching a touchdown against the Lions?
Bakhtiari's an athlete. I would do that. Seems like a good play. I'd run that.
I'm confident.
Jordan Love at quarterback?
I'd let Bakhtiari throw it and then catch it himself.
Oh, that's fair.
Okay. Let's go with the Titans to wrap this up, this clusterfuck. This isn't Mike Vrabel's fault.
I agree.
I'm not going to lie. I thought we were done. I forgot about the Titans.
Yeah, we'll speed through this. There isn't much. But people are saying Vrabel can't coach, and I can't take it.
He coaches.
Knock it off.
Well, I mean, just based on last year, the Titans were bad last year, in my opinion.
Horrible.
And he coached them competitive. Like it seems like almost every game.
He is light
2 years ago, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they had by far the most players on their roster because they kept getting hurt.
Yep.
And he won Coach of the Year.
Yep.
And now he can't coach.
And that year they lost on a Tannehill interception to the Super Bowl runner-ups in the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to players around the league, Vrabel's one of the more respected guys. Like, if you name 5 coaches, Vrabel might be on it.
Yep.
Obviously, Belichick, Reed, 1 and 2, and then Vrabel makes his way in there. So, he's a good coach. Leave him alone. It's not his fault he's got fucking Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis at quarterback.
I'm sorry, this is going to fester in my mind. I think that Mike Tomlin fits in there as well. And I think Pete Carroll fits in there as well, too.
Agreed.
And probably Shanahan would be my top 5.
Shanahan's good. For sure, best. I mean, Shanahan's like 1 or 2 play caller.
Right.
Andy Reid's probably number 1 for me still. But yeah, Shanahan's good. He gets a little. He needs to get hit. Someone needs to punch Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah. Shout out Doug Peterson too. I think he's a candidate for that as well.
We're talking about top 5 coaches. We haven't said Dan Campbell's name. That's kind of messed up.
Oh, true. I was in my mind. I was thinking that coaches that players respect, and I would say Dan Campbell is probably up there as well.
Honestly, it'd be interesting to hear what players say about Dan Campbell now.
Right.
Like, I think he's in the mix. He's in the middle probably. But yeah, Titans quarterback controversy a little bit. I think Ryan Tannehill is better than most people give him credit for. I think Will Levis is worse than most people give him credit for. Ryan Tannehill is getting drafted as quarterback 32. Yes, there's 32 teams in the NFL. That's 224 overall. He had 5 top 12 weeks last year.
Yeah.
That was one of the most surprising stats I saw. Not terrible. I think he keeps the job for at least half the season. If they're bad, they might as well not play him. So I think Will Levis plays at some point this year. You're not drafting Ryan Tannehill. I think he is a decent bye-week fill-in, though, because I think he can play football. I'm just not convinced any of his receivers can play football.
Yep. So I'm also and I'm also not convinced that Tennessee, like you said, can play. The receivers can't play football. I don't know if Tennessee can move the ball outside of Derrick Henry right now. So I'm with you. Ryan Tannehill is probably doesn't need to be drafted.
No.
And there's no shock that his best performance last year was against the Green Bay Packers.
Great. Best cornerback trio in the NFL.
With that being said, and I don't know if you're transitioning to this, but are you willing to save a bench spot for a Malik Willis or a Will Levis? If we hear a
No.
report that one's featured over the other, nothing like that.
I'm not convinced Malik Willis is still alive and Will Levis is bad at football. So,
all right.
I can't believe they drafted Malik Willis. They gave him like a couple of games last year and thought that they saw enough.
Right.
With that team. It's unbelievable, but
also
whatever.
Will Levis, I'm going to go out on a limb. He reminds me of guys coming out of college, Brady Quinn, Paxton Lynch, guys you look at immediately and you're like, there's no way this works. There's no shot.
I don't disagree with you, Trevor.
I think he's in a tier but below Brady Quinn, though. I think Brady Quinn can play football. I don't think Will Levis can. Will Levis didn't make it at Penn State.
People forget that.
Yeah. He's bad. Okay. Running backs, obviously Derrick Henry's a stud. This offensive line's terrible, but it wasn't good last year even, and there was no passing game to fear last year either. And he still finished as running back 4. He had 9 top 12 weeks. He's currently going as running back 8, 18 overall. And that's because they drafted Tajay Spears. He's currently going as running back 53, 168 overall. They like him. And the Titans know they're not winning a Super Bowl this year. So it wouldn't surprise me if they lessen the load of Derrick Henry a little bit. And that's where the mind games come in from a fantasy football perspective. Like at 18 overall, you're thinking Derrick Henry. Yes, I would absolutely love that. Will we get a full workload Derrick Henry? I don't know. So what do you think, Luke, about these two guys?
My only worry with that, and you guys know I love Derrick Henry. My worry with what you said there, Zach, is they're not competing. Why even run Derrick Henry? Mm-hmm. I think that Tennessee might be in. Derrick Henry is not getting any younger. I know it's weird to say that because he's been bruising through people for the last 5 years. But I don't want to see Tennessee waste a Derrick Henry year because he's one of the better running backs I've seen. I think in order for Tennessee to win the game, Derrick Henry probably has to have 30 carries, right? And I think that's where all the upside for Derrick Henry is. Whether the offensive line is good, is bad, whatever, I think you just have to get the ball to Derrick Henry and everyone else get the fuck out of the way. And I think that might be a little bit of what Tennessee's offense is this year. I hate bringing fan enjoyment into this, but I'm going to say the fans would be really pissed off if Derrick Henry doesn't have the football in his hands a lot this year. Seems like one of the only gold points around Tennessee right now. I just think his workload is too appetizing for me to pass up at running back 8. Like, when has Derrick Henry ever gone at RB8? Maybe this is Derrick Henry's last big year. Maybe he already had his big last year. But I think there's still a little bit in the tank for Derrick Henry, and I think Tennessee needs to utilize it.
I hate people that do this, but I'm going to be that exact person. I'm all out on Henry just because at some point the other shoe's got to drop. Like, everybody says 28 is a bad year for running backs. Dude's 29. I mean, he's gotten incredibly high workloads for years on years on years, and he's been one of the most durable players in NFL history. There's nothing to not like about him, and for that, I'm out. Like, I just can't. It has to end eventually. When it does end, it's going to end spectacularly. I hope he's healthy. I'm not hoping he gets hurt, but even at RB8, which is admittedly based on past results a steal, with no offensive line and how much of a toll the NFL has already, I'm assuming, has taken on him, I just can't buy into him.
Yeah, and I'm probably, I'm probably way too high on him. But Trevor, I agree with you. It has to fizzle out. I'm just waiting to see it fizzle out because I've seen what this guy can do, and I've been burned by it many times.
I'm okay if you question workload wise, like he has to fall off. But anyone who's saying age 28's the bad year for running back, they don't know anything about football. Trust me. Like, over 30, maybe. Like, he's fine. 28 is, why age 28 running backs don't perform as well? Because teams don't give them the ball as much.
Right.
That's it. Like, it's because they drafted another guy. It's because they gave the other guy, like, he can still play. There's no drop in production. We see older running backs get dropped all the time. Adrian Peterson, He didn't have a team. He joins the Cardinals. He joins the Saints, and he goes crazy. Like, what? Like, he's a generational talent. I get it. He's an outlier. So is Derrick Henry. So I think that's fine. I think Derrick Henry is. I looked up his contract, and this is where it gets interesting, though. This is the final year of his contract.
Yeah, right.
So this is one of the very few running backs you could trade if Tennessee's terrible. That you could trade him to a contender. I would assume Tennessee tries to work out an extension in training camp. And if they do that, then I think we need to downgrade Derrick Henry this year. Because if they extend him, then they want to keep him for future years.
In the future, right.
If they don't do that, then run him into the fucking ground. Like, as unhuman as that sounds, as fucking terrible as it sounds, that's the game.
They already do.
So they already do.
Yep.
And they have nothing to lose then. Because to your point, if they run Derrick Henry 30 times per game, weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're winning some games, they're not worried about the wheels falling off. If he stays healthy, keep doing it. If he gets hurt, then fine. Then let's rebuild for next year. That's kind of probably how they're going to take it if they don't extend him, which is interesting. So watch that. I do feel like they're going to extend him, though.
They probably have to.
They have 2 void years in his contract, so they're still paying him for 2 more years. So I would assume they would try to extend him to lessen that a little bit.
Right.
But we will see. New general manager. I have no idea what the relationship is there. Yeah, I don't hate Derrick Henry at that. We just got to watch and see. Tajay Spears, I think he probably has a role, so I think that's probably a good value. Wide receivers. Worst wide receiver core in the NFL. I'm not sure if it's particularly close. They got Treylon Burks as their number 1, who is supposedly looking so much better this year. I think that means he looks like an NFL wide receiver, and he's actually running routes this year, because that's the difference between last year and this year. And I'm sure he is better. I think he's probably going to be fine, but he's not wide receiver 35, which is what he's going as right now.
Yeah, and I think that's coming on the back of a lot of people wanting to be correct about their take of him coming out of college.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
Right. Treylon Burks sucks at football. Do not touch him. I don't care if he's available in the 10th round. Don't want him. I can't cheer for this guy.
Even if you love him and you think, which I'm not necessarily in the mindset of he sucks at football. I'm just in the mindset that I don't really like him. I don't think he's the greatest receiver or anything. I think he's just a guy. Ryan Tannehill's throwing him the ball. I know Ryan Tannehill's fine, but Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball doesn't scream 200 yards and 2 touchdown games to me out of my receiver.
I think he goes further than that, though. Like, I think Ryan Tannehill's fine. I think Ryan Tannehill can make a good wide receiver. Treylon Burks is the wide receiver 1.
Right.
Currently. I think they signed somebody else. But currently, he's seeing the best coverage. He is seeing the safety over top. He is seeing, like, it's not going to work. This is what Robert Woods had to deal with last year. That's what I'm saying. Like, Robert Woods wasn't terrible. He just wasn't elite. And Treylon Burks might be terrible. Like, I think he's okay. Wide receiver 35, it doesn't take a massive performance to hit that, so it is what it is. And then the other 2 wide receivers aren't even being drafted. You got Kyle Phillips, who had 6 catches, 66 yards in week 1. I liked him coming out of the draft. I think he was a 7th-round pick. He played just 3 other games, didn't go over 28% of the snaps. I think he's a sleeper. I think he could be pretty good this year, actually. Don't draft him, but definitely someone to keep an eye on. I think he could be decent. He could be a good pickup in dynasty leagues, maybe. And then Nick Westbrook-Akine is still there. And I kind of believed in the guy. I think he still has the tools to do something, but I'm done putting any belief in it. I will say DeAndre Hopkins worked out here. We still got Kenny Golladay, Julio Jones, Byron Pringle, Jarvis Landry, and Sammy Watkins available. If any of those guys sign, then this whole team looks kind of different. Like, if they sign 2 of those guys, let's assume they miss out on DeAndre Hopkins, because if they add DeAndre Hopkins, all of a sudden they could compete for the AFC South legitimately, which is weird to say. But let's say they sign Sammy Watkins, Jarvis Landry. All of a sudden, Treylon Burks is the wide receiver 2 or 3, which isn't terrible. You have Derrick Henry having receivers taking some people out of the box in this offense looks a lot better.
Mhm.
So wait and see. If you're drafting now, this could be a buy low opportunity. I'm not super invested. I'm not super optimistic, but I do think the values of these people, at least, this is the floor, except for Treylon Burks. I think this is the floor, and it could go up. I think Tannehill could be respectable. I think Derrick Henry could be elite. So,
Yep.
just watch.
I'm with you.
I still want Galladay on the Packers, but yes, I'd take him as a Titan too.
To your point, to Zach, about Treylon Burks being the number one guy, and nothing happens, going to see number one coverage. I mean, the Titans have a ton of tough matchups for receivers this year. I just have the schedule up here. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore, J.C. Jackson, Denzel Ward, Marlon Humphrey. Steelers always have a defense. Tampa Bay defense. Jalen Ramsey, J.C. Horn. I mean, there's just a ton of good corners, number one corners that Tennessee's playing this year to kind of scare you off of Jalen Burks a little bit.
But how many of those teams have a good number two corner? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's why you signed one player. You
Right.
signed DeAndre Hopkins. The whole team looks so different.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. If they were not to pick up anybody else.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. This is a team that is in desperate need of receiving talent. And honestly, I mean, this isn't a show to necessarily talk about this, but if you trade Derrick Henry for a wide receiver, that's not the worst trade either.
Right.
In terms of future team building. I guess we should Chig Okonkwo. I'm off of him because people love him so much. But he's going as tight end 14, 143. The trendy breakout player. He just didn't do anything last year.
And you know what sucks? It seems like whenever there's a trendy breakout player, they never break out.
Weird, right?
Yep.
It's kind of crazy how people tend to do that. People want a tight end to be great. Last year, 32 catches, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. People talk about how he came on at the end of the year, finally getting used because they had Austin Hooper there, finally getting used, being great. So his yards to end the year starting in week 13, 68, 45, 54, 10, 24, 42, 2 touchdowns during that stretch. He's not terrible. I think he's a fine talent. There's if you draft him to be your starter, there's going to be at least half the weeks where you wish you didn't draft him.
Right. Yep. I think it's very risky to draft big unless you have no other options.
Yeah. People are saying, and I don't necessarily disagree, he's the best receiving option on this team. Maybe.
Right.
That doesn't mean much.
That's not saying much.
No, could he be? He's not going to be the featured player on this offense. He's just not.
Yep. I'm sorry. That's another point I wanted to bring up about Derrick Henry. He had the most targets last year in his career in the passing game. I don't know if that continues over. But that's something to be aware of. All right, sorry, back to tight ends.
I mean, he's going to have to.
Right.
Treylon Burks, his best asset coming out of the draft is that he can line up in the backfield.
Right.
He's the number one wide receiver, and there isn't a wide receiver two.
Right.
And he's going to be bad. This team's going to be not great, probably. People are going to call for Vrabel's head. And please, fire Vrabel, because I hope LaFleur gets fired too.
Yeah, I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Based off of everything that you know right now, and based off of really nothing, this conversation doesn't even mean anything. But does Tennessee, are they a bottom 5 team? Do they finish with a top 5 pick this year? I think they're on the trajectory.
I think so too. If you miss out on DeAndre Hopkins, I think they tank. Why wouldn't you?
Right. I agree.
But they won't. Because they have Vrabel.
And it's hard to tank too because you just put 2 kind of early draft picks into 2 quarterbacks the last 2 years.
Yeah. And they play in a bad division. They got Vrabel. Will they be 5th? I think they're not going to be 5th. And I think it's because of Vrabel. I think they'll be top 10. I think they'll be 6
top
or
10
7.
pick. Top 10 pick.
Yeah, sorry. Not overall.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think they'll probably be 6th or 7th.
That's kind of how I'm feeling too.
For fantasy, my last parting bit of knowledge, if you can call it that, the trendy pick for fantasy is often how the majority of Americans bet. They're when you see the majority of Americans bet on a certain line, there's a reason Vegas usually wins. When you see the majority of fantasy owners that when they join your league, you're happy because they draft kickers in the 5th round, there's a reason when they think somebody's trendy, it doesn't usually pan out. They both go hand in hand, so let's stop listening to those kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, this run of tight ends, he's going against tight end 14. It's just gross. So we talked about Dalton Schultz earlier at 11, and he looks better and better because 12 is Cole Kmet, 13's Dawson Knox, 14's Chikakonkwo, and then 15's Tyler Higbee, who's good.
Yeah.
Draft him before those guys, please.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so stupid. Then it's Dalton Kincaid, Greg Dulcich, Jawan Johnson, Gerald Everett, Irv Smith, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer. So it's a big ass tier of tight ends there.
Yep.
Yeah. Whatever.
In regards to best value, I think I'm going to take Derrick Henry here. I mean, there's not many players in the NFL right now that have been a number 1 player in fantasy football before, and if you can get that at running back 8, even whatever the circumstances are, I think there's value.
I'll go Kyle Phillips.
I'm going to say Tyjae Spears because Hassan Haskins beats his wife or girlfriend, so he's out of the picture. So it's
Does he?
Spears or Henry.
He just got arrested for that, right?
I think so, yeah.
Did not see that story. That sucks.
Zach thought Trevor was just making it up there.
This is how rumors get started, Trevor. Yeah, so then next week we have 1 division left, but Luke and I were talking. I think we're going to split it up. So we will have a show on Wednesday and Thursday again, but we're going to talk about Wednesday, let's say the Chiefs and the Chargers, and then I'll go Raiders and Broncos for last because I feel like we're going to have a lot to say about the Broncos and not a ton about the Raiders.
Okay, that's fine. I was going to say, I don't know if you want to save the 2 better ones for last, but that works too.
Well, we should one of the better ones for last.
Yep. Well,
with the Broncos.
Well, the worst.
Oh. Okay, well, that's what we're going to be doing next week. Again, watch live Wednesday and Thursday night on FlurrySports YouTube channel, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook. And then soon next week, probably by the time that our streams are, you will be able to find our audio podcast, Fantasy Football by Committee. You might be listening to it now. If you are, rate it 5 stars, share the show. Let's grow this show. Let's grow the community before fantasy football season because, like the name says, Fantasy Football by Committee, we are trying to win a championship together. We're working together. Let's win it. And we can do that at FlurrySports.org all year long as well. But we will be back next Wednesday night. Goodbye.
Bye.